Welcome into episode 490 of the Skate Podcast. I am Brian DeFelice, joined by Bridget Prue and Scott McLaughlin. The Bruins fell to the Florida Panthers in Brad Marchand's return to TD Garden 4-3. Bridget and Scott, I must say right off the top here that despite not being at TD Garden, hand to the sky, I'm going to take accountability for that loss last night. I have no choice but to. And do you want to know why?
Yeah,
Here I am last episode, out of the blue, pumping Andrew Peak's tires. And then the weirdest goal, one of the weirdest goals you'll see all year. Obviously, he is the cause of it, unfortunately. Obviously, I'm not blaming him too much, but he did misplay the puck and ends up in the back of the Bruins net.
His tire was too inflated. Puck bounced right off it into the net.
Way too inflated. So that's on me. I apologize for everybody watching last night.
Yeah, that was a rough one. Obviously, we'll get into it, but you come back twice in the third period to tie it, and then it always feels like there's always something like this with the Panthers. Like, oh yeah, of course they scored a weird goal with 26 seconds left to win it, and the Bruins, the Garden crowd just ends up stunned, and it's like, well, I guess it's a fifth straight loss, and 0 points to show for those comeback efforts. But yeah, that's a tough one to swallow, and you could hear it in some guys' voices after the game.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, and Lohrei had a few too that we can get into. There were some definite individual breakdowns, and obviously the peak one was killer. Lohrei had one that led to a goal too, and Sturm was asked after the game about what he thought of Lohrei, and we can get into those comments, but.
One of those two goals that Sturm put on Lohrei is particularly interesting to me. I want to get you guys' take on it.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, he's pretty honest in what he thinks in real time about Mason Lohrei. I would say, he has been. Scott's brought this up from even before the season started to now. But yeah, so I'll go to my opening shift actually right now because it makes sense in this conversation. I don't really know if they can put someone like Mason Lohrei out of the lineup right now because Hampus Lindholm missed another game. So he came back and he played the final game of the road trip. He took morning skate, and Sturm said that after morning skate, he just didn't feel 100%, and he wasn't good to go for today's game. So you see Harris back in the lineup, and you don't have any. You have 7 defensemen, so that's it. Those 6 guys that you're playing, if Lindholm is hurt, that's who you're going to have to go with. So it is a little bit concerning because we thought, all right, Lindholm made it back. He played 1 game on the road trip, and you're thinking, all right, he seems to be trending in the right direction. And then you hear that he just took morning skate. It's not very vigorous. So to have that feeling coming out of morning skate that you just don't feel great is not good.
Yeah, this injury has now certainly lingered past where I think anyone thought it was going to be, where he goes on the road trip, so you assume he's playing at least one of the games on the road. I had mentioned, I thought it was unlikely he would play the back-to-back, and so sure enough, he returns Saturday. He sits Sunday. Sturm kind of waves it off as well, it was, not officially pre-planned, but kind of pre-planned. And it's like, okay, well, obviously he's going to be back Tuesday. Morning skate, he's on the second pair. Looks like he's in. All signs are pointing that way. And then he doesn't even take warm-ups. So, Sturm kind of corrected him. Like he said, it was a game time decision. Then he kind of corrected himself and was like, well, we decided this afternoon after morning skate. And it's like, well, that's not a game time decision then. That was made before the game. So yeah, that's not great that he felt enough discomfort that, he didn't even give it a go in warmups. I don't know. I don't know if it's a setback. I don't know if he came back too soon, if it's just lingering soreness or whatever, but no matter what, it's definitely concerning.
Yeah. And it's when you think about it, big picture, and I was, this is kind of why I was saying a few episodes ago, I'm petrified of his health with how he had been out of the lineup for 3+ games after injuring it in a way that we couldn't really see on TV, but it looked like it, whatever. Then he comes back, and then yeah, he misses Utah, which at first you're kind of like, okay, maybe they're just trying to manage him on this road trip, back to back, whatever. But then yeah, he misses this last game, and now I look at Lindholm, and I just don't see a situation where he comes back into the lineup next game and the game after, and then it's like, yep, okay, here he goes. He plays the next, 75 games, whatever it is. Like I think this is gonna be what I fear this might be what it's gonna be with him this year, where he comes back and then something sets back, and I don't see it
Well,
healthy
to
for
to
7.
play that, yeah, to play devil's advocate, like that's what they have to do right now. Like whatever is going on, rest him until it's healed. Rest him until he's 100%. And then that way when he comes back, ideally he is staying in the lineup and there's nothing lingering where he's in and out and he's day to day and he's game time decisions and he's in, but then he might need to rest the next game. Like get it right. Like ultimately, listen, going even beyond this season, like Hampus Lindholm's here for a long time. He's an important part of this team. He's not old, like he's not at the end of his career. This guy's still in his prime, prime years or late prime years right now. Like just big picture, you got to get this right. So it's going to be frustrating if he misses more games, but like to me, the most important thing for the Bruins right now is just get the whatever he needs to recover, just give it to him and get this right. Like because you're right. Like you can't. It's bad for everyone if you're going through the season and he's in and out and it's just lingering the whole time.
And even, and I guess just in general. So whether it's a situation that you point out where they try to get it right, and that means just resting him and keeping him out as much as possible until they think he's 100%, which I feel like they probably thought that was the case heading to the Colorado game. But regardless, whether it's them purposefully keeping him out of the lineup for the betterment of his long-term health, or the other situation of in and out, I just like there's going to be games missed, I guess is my point with him. I just don't like, I don't sit here feeling good about his availability for one reason or the other. And until I see him in the lineup for a long stretch of time, I can't help but feel that way after knowing what he's been through over the last calendar year. And I'm not like blaming him or questioning his will to come back or anything. I mean, the proof's in the pudding with his games missed, right? And again, there'd be more clarity if we kind of saw like what happened, right? Like, oh, someone stuck a leg out on him and maybe it was like a upper thigh contusion, whatever. We don't know. We're kind of guessing, But Scott, let's not bury the lead on what the biggest story was last night in your opening shift.
Yeah, it was, of course, Brad Marchand's return to TD Garden, his first game in Boston as a member of the Florida Panthers, and delivered it. Certainly one of the best moments we've seen it in recent years at the Garden. And as far as former players returning, one of the most memorable ever. Like something that I don't think anyone who's there or anyone who's watching will ever forget. And that was at the first TV timeout, which, by the way, it took a long time. It was like almost 10 minutes into the game that we finally got the first TV timeout because they went like 5 minutes without a whistle. Tribute video for Brad Marchand, lengthy standing ovation from the sold out crowd, and a very emotional Brad Marchand who, initially I think was fighting back tears and then stopped fighting, like was actually straight up crying. He said after the game that, the moment he lost, it was when he saw his kids in the video on the screen. But a great job by the Bruins with the video. It had highlights from throughout his entire career, from his first goal, the Stanley Cup in 11, obviously, all the way through him being team captain, and a great ovation from the crowd. When we talked to Marchand on Monday, and he kind of downplayed like the response he was expecting, or said he wasn't really entirely sure what to expect. I always wonder if players really mean that, or if he's just downplaying it for the sake of downplaying it. But I do think it all just kind of got to him in that moment, and maybe was above and beyond. I'm sure he knew he was going to get cheers, but maybe it was even above and beyond what he thought he was going to get. David Pastrnak said after that it was more emotional than he was expecting. He said, obviously I knew this was coming, but it was more emotional. So that was a great moment. I think just really it doesn't bring to a close because Marchand's going to be back here again as a player. He just signed a 6-year contract. But I think it was the moment that both sides needed, because Marchand didn't get to say goodbye. You didn't know when his last game was as a Bruin. He was obviously injured leading up to the trade. He comes back 4 days later last year, but doesn't play in that game, doesn't see fans, doesn't, come out of the tunnel to give a wave or anything like that.
I saw him.
So this was really the moment that Marchand needed, that fans needed to, to say goodbye and to thank him.
Yeah. No, it was emotional. I mean, I kind of figured he would be. He's been emotional about other things in the past, like when the Bruins lost Game 7 to Florida, which ended up being Bergeron and Krejci's last game of their career. He was crying then, because he knew. I mean, the fans didn't know yet, but I think Bergeron and Krejci probably had let some of their teammates know that was going to be it. And so he was emotional then, and it was a great tribute video. And he got cheers even when he first just got on the ice for warmups. And everybody knows he likes to stay out there and be the last person off the ice on warmups. And so he started getting cheers when he was the only one out there, and then he put his stick up, and every single time the crowd did have the ability to cheer for him, they would, including when he took a penalty and went to the box. So he got a lot of support from the crowd. I actually had friends text me like, "Oh, is Marchand getting booed?" And I was like, "Not even close." I don't know why some people thought that would be the reception, but I mean, he was very well liked here. He never seemed like he was happy to be out. He always seemed emotional about it. His very first press conference that he did with Florida, he was emotional then too, and just disappointed that he wasn't able to come to a deal, I guess, with Boston, and obviously not disappointed with the result of winning a Stanley Cup. But at the time that he got traded, that was a big change for him. He spent his entire career in Boston. So yeah, that was definitely one of the more memorable times I've been at the Garden, especially in a positive way, because there's been some memorably bad ones as well. But this was, even though the Bruins don't win, I think fans got what they wanted when they were at last night's game.
Yeah, and Scott mentioned that he signed a 6-year deal with Florida, so presumably he'll be back at TD Garden as an opponent, but not this year, right? So barring a potential playoff matchup, which I think we're a long ways away from that being the reality. But so it was good for Marchand to get that out of the way, and honestly, it kind of felt like some of his former teammates were waiting for those festivities to kind of get over with before they got to their game last night as well. But more to talk about with Marchand, but keeping it to the Bruins on the ice. After the Bruins lost to Tampa Bay, they were 3-1-0, and we recorded a podcast, and there was something about that loss that just sat with me the wrong way, despite how admirable their comeback efforts were. And I do think that the Bruins, for the majority of the last 40 minutes against Tampa Bay, outplayed the Lightning. But there was something about that start, and it seemed like a missed opportunity to keep riding that wave of 3-0 hockey that they had been on. But you fall short in that game, and you come up with no points, and now you got to go on a West Coast or Western road trip against some of the beasts of the West in Colorado and Vegas, and an up-and-coming team in Utah with good skill. And I was just nervous about that trip. And I think I mentioned on here that they have to have a successful trip. And because following the loss to Tampa Bay, now you're 3-1. That can quickly go to 500 or worse. And I just don't think that this Bruins team can afford could afford an October where they are 500 or certainly less than when it comes to their chances to make the playoffs this year if they wanted to do that. And I know Scott had mentioned that you don't think that this team had the ability to even have a runaway October anyway, that 500 is all we can really ask for at the worst case, and or maybe best case. And I'm not even going to dispute that necessarily. But here we are, and now they're.
I mean, I thought they could be better than 500. I just didn't think like they were going to build up a cushion that they could lean on if we're talking about like the playoff race.
Right. No, exactly. But here we are now, and they're 3-5. They've lost 5 straight games in regulation, and this is ultimately my point is this team couldn't afford this. They just couldn't afford this, and they've gotten put in multiple multi-goal deficits over this 5-game losing streak, and surprisingly, only one of the games was more than a 1-goal loss. So it speaks to their ability to stay in games and never give up and fight back. But I also think that them playing from behind so much also speaks to just their lack of speed, skill, and talent, because they're chasing play and it's not allowing them to have a full 60-minute effort because they just lack where other teams don't. And again, it's early in the season. We're 8 games in, but I'm nervous that this season might get away from them earlier than maybe anybody anticipated.
Yeah, I mean, like the 1 or 2 of these might be moral victories, but not 5 in a row. Like they need actual victories, and I mentioned that I think you could hear it from a couple of the players after the game, and like Morgan Geekie said, it can only be encouraging for so long, right? He said this one stings. At some point, something's got to give. We got to figure out how to play a full 60. David Pastrnak said it sucks. He says show and fight is a positive every night, but at the same time, you got to question why we are in that position that we are. Most of the nights, it's our own doing. We can't keep playing from behind and making those mistakes every night. Like it, those are guys who have, in Pastrnak especially, who have seen more success, and this is the problem. Like when losses start to pile up, is you can be like, yeah, okay, we showed fight, we're not rolling over like last year, but when you still end up with losses, that's when it becomes a challenge to keep guys on track and to fight through that frustration. Like it can start to unravel pretty quickly. We were talking about it off air before the show. Like losing 5 straight in regulation, not even getting a point out of it. Last year's team didn't do that until after the trade deadline, until after they blew it up. And then it would end up being a 10-game losing streak total, 7 straight in regulation as part of that. But like, even as bad as last season was before the deadline, they didn't go 5 in a row without points. They found ways to mix in an overtime or 2 to get wins. Like, yeah, like this is a tough spot, and the schedule doesn't let up. Like, okay, like you look at Thursday, and it's like, oh, Anaheim Ducks, like that seems like an easier game on paper. Anaheim's tied for the 5th best record in the West. They're winning games right now. Like there are no real pushovers for this team. Then you have the Colorado Avalanche coming in on Saturday again. Second time in a week you've played them. Monday and Tuesday, you have your 3rd back-to-back of the month. Like the schedule just keeps coming. So if they don't, like, you get one practice between these games, if that, there's going to be off days mixed in as well. Like, you don't get this cleaned up real fast, the losses just keep piling up. And like, then, you win Thursday night against Anaheim. Okay, maybe you can start to build something, get back on track. But like, man, you lose Thursday, if you just can't beat Colorado Saturday because they're just a better team than you, like, you're really falling behind the 8 ball. And that's, Brian, as you said, like, it's the one thing we said that this team can't do. Like, they can't fall behind and try to play catch up all year to climb back into the playoff picture.
Yeah, and they score the extra attacker goal, and you're like, oh, okay, they did complete this comeback, and you're like, okay, well, it looks like they're going to get at least 1 point that they, at this point, feel like they desperately need, just, to have a point, have something to prove for their ability to come back and not roll over in games. But then only 30 seconds later, or I think a little bit more than that, maybe more like 50 seconds later or something like that, they end up giving up the go-ahead goal, and overtime doesn't happen. And that's probably why Morgan Geekie was so upset. I mean, I know obviously it all happened quickly, games ending quicker than they expect because they're thinking they're going to play overtime, but Geekie's the one who scores the extra attacker goal, and Pasternak was involved in it too. And it just, the happiness of getting rewarded for scoring with a goalie pulled, compared to the deflation of giving up a goal in the final 30 seconds of the game, is just, it's just not a good feeling. And I don't know if you guys had any comments on their start. It seemed like their second and third periods were better. They outshot them in the second period. It was kind of a positive sign. And then third period, obviously they tied the game. But also, if you guys have thoughts on individual players that either you think did well or did not do well, including Casey Mittelstadt, who we talked about a lot last episode because he was healthy scratched, and what will his response be was a question going into the game.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, so I asked Marcus Sturm after the game, like, and I specifically asked about like giving up goals right after scoring and if he sees any commonality, and his answer is basically like, not really. It's individual mistakes. And he tried to spin as a positive of like, that's easier to clean up than, if it's like a team wide issue. But when there are this many individual mistakes, like, it is a team issue, So like right out of, their first shift of the game was horrible. Like, Marchand gets a chance right off the opening faceoff, and then, same shift, Tanner Jeannot trips him. So Panthers go on an early power play and score, and boom, you're in a 1-0 hole. The second goal early in the second period, so Marcus Sturm was asked about Lohrei's involvement in two of the goals, being the second and third goals, and said they're on him, no question. Like, straight up threw Lohrei right under the bus. Now the third goal, I think, completely fair. It's just Marchand chips the pass up to Eetu Luostarinen, and Lohrei starts ahead of him and just takes a bad angle and doesn't have the speed to make a play, and Luostarinen goes right around him and scores. That's on Lohrei. The second one, I'm interested in what you guys think, because it's a defensive zone face-off. The puck is kind of sitting loose right behind. I'm blanking on who took the draw.
Minton?
I think it was Minton, because then it's Jeannot and Lohrei are both reaching for it. Gadjevich from Florida is also reaching for it, and all three sticks come together and the puck pops loose and AJ Greer knocks it in. Obviously, it happens really fast. Lohrei, it looks to me, is trying to move it to McAvoy in front of the net, so I've kind of been going back and forth with a couple people on Twitter, where some people are saying like, that's a 100% no matter, never move the puck to the front of the net off a face-off, which I hear, but like, also there was no Panther near McAvoy. Like, it would have been a clean play if the puck gets there. I think Jeannot is more like, Jeannot doesn't win a battle against Gadjevich. Gadjevich just gets inside him and is able to poke that puck off Lohrei's stick. So call it unfortunate or blame both guys, or like I don't really know which way you go on that, but ultimately it is a mistake because the puck ended up right on Greer's stick in a golden scoring area. And then the last goal, like, so Bridget, you mentioned Mittelstadt, and yeah, he was much better in this game, and he picks up 2 third period assists, 2 primary assists. But then that line on the winning goal, all 3 forwards are caught up ice. It's a 3-on-2, and none of them can get back to help. Like that's why Verhaeghe ends up with an open shot from the slot in the first place. And then yes, it takes a bad bounce off Peake's skate, and like the end result is it just looks like a bad bounce, but it was a 3-on-2 before that, and that's because in the final minute of the game, a tie game, you're not pushing for a tying goal anymore. You don't have to take chances and cheat offensively, and all 3 of Mittelstadt, Zach, and Arvidsson are caught in the offensive zone. Like that just can't happen in that situation.
Yeah, I'll read Sturm's comment after the game about Mittelstadt responding to the scratch. He said he was good, much better today. We talked about his skill, to use his skill more. That means making more plays, especially in the offensive zone and on the power play. I think in the offensive zone, he definitely did good tonight. But like, yeah, that's just one zone of the ice. And you could tell in his answer too that he was like still reluctant almost to give a complete compliment, but just that he did, play better than I guess what caused him to get scratched on the road trip.
Yeah, I think Mittelstadt answered the bell for the most part, and I think that he deserves credit for that. It's not, you would think that it's an automatic that if a player gets called out and they get scratched, that they'll bounce back the next game because they'll be pissed off, which oftentimes is the case. But I also think that in those situations in that first game back, you're probably also battling overthinking and being like, I don't want to F up again and again, right? So sometimes people can come back into the lineup and still struggle because, again, they're lacking confidence and decisiveness. But at the end of the day, if that's the Casey Mittelstadt that you get, I think everybody's fine with that, right? And he was competing more, but again, with him, it's just consistency. And regarding Mittelstadt, there was an interesting clip that went around after our last episode where Craig Button of TSN, I believe it was talking about Mittelstadt and mentioning how it's never been a lack of talent with him and how it's been he lacks that competitive spirit or something along those lines. I forget who he was talking with, but is that, and I think he may have even mentioned Colorado and moving on from him and him not being what they hoped he would be in that essence. But is that something that you guys have seen in his time in Boston as well, lacking competitive spirit? I think that might be a softball question. I think the answer is kind of obvious, but what'd you make of Craig Button's comments, and also at the same time trying to ruin the Bruins' chances of potentially ruining his value for the whole hockey world to see from a valued opinion?
Yeah, I mean, that was harsh. And if that's what Craig Button thinks and that's what he's heard from people, then hey, like, go ahead and put it out there. I can't go that far yet. Like I think like questioning someone's competitive spirit is like that is about as bad as it gets. Like if you're like you just don't care enough to compete, it's like I don't know if you could have like a harsher criticism of an NHL player.
That was sharp.
Yeah, so like I'm not going that far. I haven't really heard that from people. And again, the whole like, yeah, that's what Colorado saw. It's like I made this point in the last podcast. Colorado also signed him to a 3-year extension after half a year there. Like Colorado also saw something good. There's so like it's not like Casey Mittelstadt has been horrible like from the day he was in June, like from time he was in juniors. Like there's a reason he was a top 10 pick. There was a reason the Colorado Avalanche wanted him in the first place. There was a reason they signed him to an extension. Like there's obviously, there are good attributes in there. You got to find a way to get it out of him consistent. Like that, you said like consistency, and like that's I guess where I am now is I'm like, he's definitely an inconsistent player, and you have to figure that out. I don't, maybe I just don't know him well enough. Maybe I need to talk to more people, but like I can't go as far as to be like he's an uncompetitive player. Like I don't know, he looked pretty competitive last night, and like I get it, that's one game, and it needs to be there more consistently. But yeah, I mean maybe that'll prove to be right. Maybe as we all get to know Casey Mittelstadt more, we'll come to that same conclusion. But yeah, that's like if you're gonna say that, like you better be confident, and I think Craig Button probably is. That's probably is how he feels. But yeah, but it was interesting. Like Millsap wasn't asked about that directly, but after morning skate on Tuesday, he was asked like what drives him as a player, which I think was a question clearly kind of influenced by what Craig Button had said. And he talked about like making his family proud, and like hockey's the only thing he's ever known. Like it's his greatest love, and like I thought it was a good answer. It's like, okay, if you want to make your family proud, like you don't do that by not caring if you're good or if your team wins or whatever. So I don't know. Like I haven't gotten that impression just from my own interactions with Mittelstadt. In fact, like when I talked to him one-on-one during camp, I got the opposite impression. Like I do think he cares. So maybe it's a focus thing. Like I don't know, but yeah, there have obviously been issues. There's a reason he's bounced around, and you hope he can figure it out.
But at the same time, Buffalo traded him for Bowen Byram, who at the time had just come off winning a Stanley Cup and was going to be an instrumental part of their blue line. So like that was a very valuable asset that Buffalo got in return. So it wasn't like they just bought him out.
Yeah, and I would say, just because obviously also being in the locker room and getting to interact with him a little bit, I wouldn't say that that's the vibe I get from him, is that he's uncompetitive. I mean, maybe if you're comparing him to someone like Brad Marchand, who is like the most competitive person that you'll ever see on the ice and goes out there and gets a little crazy because he's so competitive. Like that's fair. He's not at that level, but I don't think a lot of people are. My read on him is not that he doesn't have that in him. I think everybody that's a professional athlete probably has enough of it. Otherwise, they wouldn't be there in the first place. My thought is maybe it's more like he's still trying to gain back confidence, and sometimes it comes across as being like hesitant, and maybe that is what you can read into that different ways. But yeah, I wouldn't say I agree with that statement.
Yeah, I thought that was very that was quite the sound clip I heard. And
yeah,
that was something.
Yeah, and like as far as like tanking his trade value, like first off, like I don't think Craig Button has that much power, and secondly, like Casey Mittelstadt's trade value is going to be dictated by his play. Like if he struggles and he's healthy scratch 4 more times, yeah, of course he has no trade value. That has nothing to do with anything Craig Button said. Like that's just teams are going to look at him and be like, he's not performing. Why would I take on that contract or even part of that contract if the Bruins were to retain salary? If Casey Mittelstadt performs and starts stringing together games like he played Tuesday night, then maybe his trade value gets restored if that's something that the Bruins want to explore going forward. So, yeah, his trade value will be based on his play, not on what one person has to say about his competitiveness.
As will his spot in the lineup, right? I mean, that was one thing, Scott. You posted a video of him after practice giving an answer about coming back from the healthy scratch and whatnot, and he mentioned in his answer about about how it's out of his control. And I understand what he's saying, I believe. And technically he's not wrong. Like, coaches make lineup decisions, but I didn't love that answer because it on this roster and with his talent, relatively speaking, compared to the rest, it very much is within his control, because I really think that he wasn't scratched because of a lack of talent compared to the people around him. And so, um, on this Bruins team, if Casey Mittelstadt is bringing the attention to detail and the work ethic every night, I don't think Marco Sturm is going to scratch him from his lineup because they need offense. So I think that element, I understood what he was saying. I'm not trying to like overanalyze every word one says, but I just fundamentally, I think the mindset for him needs to be, no, it is in my control. Like, my play is going to dictate what head coach, does with his lineup, and I'm going to be in it.
Yeah, I think like that was a poor choice of words that people who want to rip him can cling on to. In otherwise, I thought like good answer and kind of accountable media session. I think it was the very next question. He was asked like what Sturm's message was, and he said like, yeah, he just told me I need to be better, and I don't disagree at all. Like he said like I know I need to be better. So it's like, but that part gets, and I included that. So like I'm not, don't no one accuse me of like clipping it just for clicks. I included the whole thing, but like that first part where it says, it's out of my control is like, it's so much easier to latch onto than 12 seconds later when he says I need to be better. But ultimately, like I don't think it's worth like parsing words too much. He came back in and had a good game, and like I said, like that line all got caught up ice on the winning goal. You watch it back, I'm like, I don't know if that's on Mittelstadt necessarily. Like one of them had to get back quicker than they did, and unfortunately, it's just none of the three.
I was gonna say too, just like one last thought on that line, I guess as a whole, before we move on from the Mittelstadt conversation. That line was on the ice for Zaka's goal. Arvidsson, I thought, worked pretty hard on that shift, and I had noticed him prior, kind of just grinding and trying to spark something. Ends up Zaka scoring, and that line celebrated like it was like the most important goal. I don't know if you noticed the kind of like a little bit exaggerated emotion, a little bit more emotion than you would normally see for a goal. At least I thought they all like looked for each other and like wanted to like celebrate. Obviously, that's what people do after goals, but it was a little bit more so, like slightly more emotional, I guess. I think they just know that they're getting criticized, and they finally got one to go in, and it felt good. So I think they are trying to support each other. That line. Those three guys knowing that what's being said.
So obviously we have been critical of them at times, and justifiably so. I want to first say I was very happy for them that they found a way to score for the reasons you just mentioned, Bridget. First of all, it was a huge goal at that point in the game. And yes, it was good for them, because sometimes in hockey it's you take one and you move on, right? Not every goal has to be pretty. But the critical eye in me couldn't help but look at the players in totality and say, they got a bit fortunate here, because the when they crossed the offensive blue line in transition, Victor Arvidsson was handled easily in a one-on-one situation and fell to the ice, and Florida regained 100% possession of that puck. Pavel Zacha initiated a strong forecheck, caused a turnover. Next thing you know, then that line capitalized. But you see where I'm going with this? I guess my question is, how much stock do you put in that goal when you look at the play in general, where if Florida just takes care of business, it's an Arvidsson one and done situation, pucks out of the defensive zone for Florida. I know how the play ensued, and like I said, I'm happy for it. But it's tough for me to look at the whole situation and be like, yeah, the second line like killed it in that shift, because it probably should have just been a cleared puck and play ensuing in the neutral zone somewhere.
Yeah, I think someone might want to tell Arvidsson to stop trying to take defenders one-on-one. It's like it worked in that Chicago game where he I think it was Levshinov, he like went wide around and then throws it to the front, kind of pinballs around, Mittelstadt bangs it in. And it seems like that gave him the confidence to just try to take every defender one-on-one. And I think he's like 0 for 72 since. So he, probably gonna have to clean that up, because those are, like I said, like you said, like most of those are just resulting in turnovers. This is one they got back, ends up being a goal, but I don't know that that's the way that they want or need Victor Arvidsson playing, because it doesn't. It's not a strength for most NHLers, and it doesn't. Maybe it was for him at one point, but I don't think it is now.
Like, I'll ask it this way: Did that goal make you feel better about that line's construction, ability to generate, or did you look at it as like it's a broken play and like hats off to capitalizing?
I think that goal plus some other shifts they had when they created chances makes me feel good about this game. Like, they had a good game. Does it make me feel better big picture? Like, no, because we've also seen that line struggle too much. So like they've got to be good for more than one game. Like, let's string together a second, third good game in a row, and then I'll start to feel better. So big picture, I don't think my opinion of that line changed much, but they had a good game, and I'll give them credit there.
Yeah, I was going to say, like I said, I think Arvidsson, I had noticed maybe a shift before or earlier in that shift was just, he looked better, I thought, than he had in the previous few games. In terms of being like executing what he wanted to. He was more successful at executing what he was thinking and trying to do. And so he made a few steals, like forced some turnovers, used his speed a little bit more. So I just thought he looked like he was more successful in that game. And then part of the reason why that Zacha goal goes in was because earlier in that shift, he won some battles. And so just like little small details that you kind of notice going a guy's way or against them, this game, it seemed like there was more things going for them.
And I guess just to amend my statement too, it's like good game, ... until that very last goal. Like, that's what's so frustrating about this is
right.
Like, even when something seems to go right, then there's just the one breakdown that proves costly. So like that they were out there for the winning goal and they were caught up ice. So like that's part of their night too. And they have to live with that. The team has to live with it. Like a better shift there, they get to overtime and get a point.
Right. Like, it's a fluky goal that goes in, but at the same time, the puck rings, leaves a dent in the post, because they're in a situation where Carter Verhaeghe, who's a 35-40 goal scorer in this league, has a point blank shot from the slot in transition. So it's like, okay, yeah, that's bad luck to go off a peak like that. That's gonna make the highlights and be like, oh, poor Bruins. But how about hem them in for the final 40 seconds of the game when you just have all the momentum in the world and you tied it again in that period, right? So yeah, it's frustrating, and again, just kind of speaks to what I was saying last episode, which is it's always just something with this team, and until they can go on a bit of a run and prove otherwise, that's their margin for error is very thin.
And one of, like, if you rewatch that last goal too, you see this a lot from guys back checking, and it's one of the most frustrating things to see. Pavel Zacha is like starts way down low in the offensive zone, and gives like a great back check all the way until he gets just about alongside Verhaeghe, and then glides, and Verhaeghe gains like another half a step on him to take that pass and get the shot off. And I'm always kind of baffled when I see that. I'm like, oh, like you covered all that ground, and then at like the last second started gliding and let the guy get a half a step on you. Like that's frustrating to watch.
Yeah, and I think it's because if I had to guess, I feel like when you're back checking that 95%, there's nothing that you can do to impact the play other than get on your high horse. But
Right.
once you get closer to the play, now they start analyzing what's about to happen, what can I break up or anticipate, and that second or half second of thinking, yeah, leads to separation sometimes. But so can I just give you guys a big picture concern for me as well? And Scott, do you
Just
have a
just
finishing
before
thought?
you go, just before we do, I did want to get your opinion on that second goal. Like, do
Oh,
you
right.
put that on Lohrei or Jeannot, or like how did you guys see that?
I mean, he drove by Lohrei, and
No,
that
no,
was
no. The one off the defensive zone face off where it
The Greer goal.
bounces right over to Greer.
yeah. Didn't he get it past Lohrei? He stepped around Lohrei for that.
But but Lohrei's reaching in to play the puck, and then it gets poked off his stick. Like he's not
Defending there.
like he's not moving the puck in the direction of Greer. He's actually trying to move it the opposite way, and then I think it ends up being Gadjevic's stick that gets in there, but Jeannot's stick is right there too. It's like three sticks kind of coming together, and it pops loose.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely deserve some blame if that's what you're trying to say. Like, I thought in real time because it was him and McAvoy out there, and they're the only two back. Obviously, it's off a quick face off, and Greer goes to the net, and uh, I don't know. I think he misplayed it. That was my judgment of it. Was he misplayed it, and he was the last line of defense, really, unless I'm misremembering that. Because McAvoy was over on the opposite side, and it like he hadn't rotated because it was just off the face off, and I don't know. I don't think McAvoy could have recovered in time.
So it's it happened so quick, and I think Scott, you mentioned that you're conversing with people about Lohrei. Should he have moved it to McAvoy? Should he have not? When McAvoy's in front of the net, and it happens so quick. And then if you watch it back, if Lohrei doesn't move it to McAvoy, his options are he quickly grabs the puck and curls right, which is going to be right into a bunch of traffic and probably an oncoming Greer, or he grabs that puck and takes it behind the net himself, or just immediately just shoots it somehow behind the net out of trouble, or pass it to McAvoy. I think one of the things Bridges just mentioned is true too. Like McAvoy was kind of, I wonder if McAvoy should have moved away from the front of the net there. Like, you off of one face off, oftentimes that weak side defenseman goes, behind the net for that indirect from his partners. Again, but the play happened so quick and it was so condensed in that small area. And yes, to the crux of your question, Jeannot kind of made it difficult for Lohrei to corral that puck. So I'm not gonna blame Lohrei solely. I think it was a tough situation. I think his D partner could have given him a safer outlet. I also think his strong side winger, took the puck from him. So yeah, he deserves some blame. But I'm not going to blame him completely, like Marco Sturm seemed to do.
Yeah, and that's really ultimately why I find this even more interesting, is because Sturm did put two goals, the second and third goals, squarely on Lohrei. Like I said, like look up, textbook definition, throwing a player under the bus. Like,
Well, maybe I mean
that was it.
I was just rewatching it. Maybe there's been a conversation from Sturm to him specifically about that kind of a play off of a face off where like he's being aggressive and he's stepping towards the face-off dot, but like maybe he wants him to stay at home, because he gets pulled up and then he has to try to turn and get back into position. And by that point in
But
time,
then I mean, if he stays back, then there's still a scoring chance. Because
so
then
not
no one
like
from
all the way back, but like it stays in position between, the face-off shot and the goal instead of stepping up.
I wish I was. I guess so they are practicing Wednesday. I'm not able to make it. I guess I wish I was there to ask Sturm, like, what should Lohrei have done there? Maybe someone will ask that. But like that I would be interested in, because you're right. Like, if maybe there's been some sort of dictate of like never play the puck towards your own slot off a faceoff. Maybe that's just like a hard and fast rule that they have. In which case, then yeah, Lohrei would be wrong for trying to move the puck in that direction to McAvoy. But yeah, I guess like I don't know what to Brian's point. Like, I don't know what the better option would have been. So I would be interested to hear from Sturm on, in his eyes, what Lohrei should have done there.
So yeah, so a bigger concern for me right now, guys, looking at this team, is we've talked about how they've lost 5 games in regulation. And I mentioned that they have gotten themselves into some deep holes when it comes to multi-goal deficits. They were down 3-0, 3-1, 4-1 to Tampa, 4-2, 5-3, 6-3 to Vegas before coming back, 3-1 to Colorado before losing that one, 4-1, 2-0 to Florida before coming back to tie it. They're getting themselves in these holes. And at the same time, the only time the Bruins have had a multi-goal lead themselves, I believe, was when they got the empty net goals against Washington and Buffalo to win those games 3-1 respectively. So my point is, they're constantly playing from behind and in a big way, but simultaneously they can't get out to leads themselves by more than 1 goal, and when they do, they seem to relinquish it pretty quickly. And the alarming part for me is that the goaltending, for the most part, and the penalty killing, for the most part, has been very good. And yet they're still finding themselves in these situations. And to me, that scares me.
Yeah, you're right. Like, yeah, goaltending has certainly been good enough. I thought Swayman was good again on Tuesday. Penalty kill, obviously gave up that first one, but after that was good. Has been one of the, I know they were in the top 5 in the NHL going into Tuesday, so they're probably still right around there. But yeah, falling into multi-goal holes is just not a recipe for success for any team in the NHL. This Bruins team, we thought that would be like absolutely lethal, because we thought, like, man, they're not scoring more than 2 or 3 goals in a game anyways. They've shown more of an ability to come back and erase deficits than I thought they would have, but they're just creating too big of a deficit. And they're giving up too many goals after scoring themselves, or like they tie it and then they give the opponent the lead back again. So yeah, I was trying to quickly look up like leading trailing time, and I don't have it in front of me yet, but yeah, I'm guessing like their lead time is probably among the lowest in the NHL, because they have just been constantly playing catch up, and that's a killer, because then you spend so much energy chasing the game. And like, I'm not saying that's why they ultimately made the mistakes they made on those 2 goals in the third period, but there is an element of like, when you spend so much time and energy just trying to get back in the game, it is a little bit human to like, if and when you finally get there, to like exhale a little bit, and then you let up. And so yeah, it's like, man, even if they can just keep these deficits to 1 goal, like, just don't fall behind 2-0, don't fall behind 3-1.
And how about stay out of the penalty box?
Yeah, remains a big problem.
The PK has been good, but they're always in the box, and it kills any this team's going to struggle to generate 5-on-5 extended offensive zone time even when they are disciplined. So imagine how difficult it is when they are not disciplined and they're constantly in the box. It just fucks with the rhythm of the game for them. And you know, you're gonna take penalties. It's the nature of the game. But I mean, you talked about that first play, Scott. Could they have made Brad Marchand's return to Boston any easier on that first shift? I'm pretty sure it's a one face-off by the Bruins and indecision from Jeannot and maybe the strong side defenseman there off the draw, and the puck somehow avoids both of them and just goes right to Marchand, who breaks in almost all alone before 10 seconds later taking a tripping call from Jeannot, and then they're on the power play and it's 1-0. It's like, how does that even happen? How does that start even happen? Of course, Brad Marchand, literally seconds into his return to the Garden, is on a half breakaway off a Bruins one faceoff. And I love Marchand. It's not because he did anything on that play. The puck went to him because Jeannot missed it. And it's like, but then there's other games like Vegas and Colorado where they start on time. So it's just infuriating. And you have to love their ability. Like, I think it's, they're down 2-0 going to the third. I thought that game was over, despite their comeback efforts already this year. I just think Florida's a different beast sometimes, and Boston didn't have much of anything, and they come back and they tie it 2-2, and then they tie it 3-3. So it's like, they show you things where you want to love them and give them pats on the back for their effort, but they can't help themselves. They can't get out of their own way to start the year so far.
I was going to bring up special teams too, because not only were they taking too many penalties, but when they had chances to chip back, when they had the power plays, the first several of them felt pretty disjointed and felt like turnovers. I know Scott had commented at one point on zone entries that weren't clean, and the power play wasn't helping them. The first several that they got, eventually they end up scoring a power play goal in the third period, but before that it was, I always keep notes in my little document, and I'll per power play have a little section, and it was not really much. The first time was really not much happened, really not, there wasn't even a note really to put besides they lost opening face off of the power play multiple times, and then it ends up getting cleared, and then so some trying to get back in the zone wasn't clean, and there just wasn't a lot of times that they had setting up, and then they said that in the second intermission, maybe it was Steve Spott or maybe it was Sturm, but coaches said, what the hell, guys, you got to just try to get more shots on goal, because they thought they were passing it too much, and Florida was pressuring them and causing turnovers and whatnot. But the power play could have gotten them back in it and gotten them back tied quicker if it was successful.
Well, and then they also had another power play right after tying it that they could have taken the lead on and didn't. I think their first three power plays, they had one total shot on goal. Not good enough. And they finally on that, I think that was their fourth one that they tied the game on.
Yeah, it was.
Started just funneling some pucks to the net, and it's like, oh, look at that, you scored. Imagine that. Isn't that what we all say all the time? Why does this team need to keep being reminded to just get pucks towards the net?
Yeah, because it ends up being deflected by Elias Lindholm, and it goes in. And honestly, not similar play, but same kind of deal with the extra attacker goal. Technically not a power play, but you have an extra person on the ice. You throw it to the net, and Geeky puts in the rebound. It's the puck ends up in a more dangerous area for you to score if it happens to bounce out in the right way, or if you happen to get a deflection, or even if it just hits somebody on the way through.
And they're so far on the perimeter. They're making the offensive zone as big as possible, which is not a good thing on the power play. You wanna cave the penalty killers in, and their penalty killers are just bull rushing the Bruins because they know that they're just gonna panic with the puck on their stick. I mean, even McAvoy and Pasternak, sometimes they panic with pressure, and it's like, okay, yeah, keep dumping the puck. When you're dumping the puck down into the corner, on the power play because you're trying to avoid an oncoming penalty killer. And then so for example, I feel like sometimes you'll see McAvoy, who's at the top of the umbrella, and he's pretty much touching the blue line. And then Pastrnak is on the left side of the blue line, also very far away from the goal. And like McAvoy will give it to Pastrnak. The penalty killer will anticipate it. He'll charge Pastrnak. And then Pasternak's like, fuck, I got to get rid of it. So he throws it down to the corner. And then you have Geeky, who vacates wherever he is, and he tries to go find it. But now it's a 50-50 race between Geeky and the penalty killing defenseman. And then Lindholm's like, oh, fuck, I got to give Geeky. It's a constant just, ring around the rosy situations. Like, figure it out. Figure it out. Like, find the guy in the bumper. Do something, but you can't be doing slap puck on the power play.
Well, and then after they tied it, that next power play, like just a couple minutes later in the third period, they almost give up a shorty. They turn it over on an entry, and Panthers have a 2-on-1. Swayman makes a nice save on Luostarinen. But like that came from, I think that was a good coaching point to Florida's favor, because the Bruins have been using this kind of almost like a double-barreled entry where usually it's Zacha and Elias Lindholm come up together and they're like fairly close, and it's like as they get over center ice, it sort of is up to one of them to pick like, oh, I have the lane or you have the lane. Florida read it. It had worked for the Bruins a couple times in this game. They read it perfectly on that one. Like Luostarinen just jumped right between them and forced the turnover before they had made a decision with the puck. So like that's another thing. It's like you get 5 power plays, you run the same entry 3 or 4 times, your opponent's going to figure it out. But yeah, it's. I was looking up, so I pulled up a couple of the stats, like just to get back. So they've taken the most minor penalties, right there. That's not good. They're 25th in time leading, but they're number 1 in time trailing. They've spent more time trailing than any team in the NHL so far. 223 minutes compared to just 95 minutes leading. So,
on the penalty kill, they're 8th in the league on the penalty kill. So despite taking the most minor penalties, at least they're top 10. Power play, they rank 24th. Honestly, those both kind of check out just looking at the eye test. Like, it's easy to see the PK has been good. Power play has been below average. I mean, they're converting, I think, at 16.2%. So anyway, it's 8 games, but here we are, 3-5. And we have Anaheim on Thursday and then Colorado after that. So I feel like we may not have touched on Marchand as much with some of his post-game comments as maybe we anticipated, but did you guys have any final thoughts before we sign off?
Quick shout out to the fourth line for working pretty hard and doing their thing, and VL getting into a fight, and Kastelik having some good scoring chances. I guess it's worth mentioning that the fourth line just continues to be an identity line and kind of set the tone physically and with energy. So I guess we didn't talk about them at all, but probably worth a mention.
Yeah, I mean, VL also committed a bad penalty, though. Just Bruins have offenses on possession, creating chances, and he just runs a guy from behind into the post. But
what's he gonna get with them?
And actually, did he not even get called for that? They might have just brought the faceoff out of the zone. But anyways, yeah, I mean, I guess my final thought on Marchand, just to touch on one post-game comment, he was asked if he could see himself back in the Bruins organization someday, and said, to be honest, yes. And he referenced like Chara being back in the organization, Bergeron being around, obviously Adam McQuaid, Tuukka Rask has a role in the organization. Like, he kind of referenced all those guys, all of whom he got dinner with on Sunday, by the way. But yeah, I thought that was interesting. Like, obviously, and another interesting comment he made was pregame on ESPN. He was asked by Steve Levy, like, is there anything you regret about how it went? Obviously, he went on to win a cup, so it's kind of a weird question, but like, anything you regret about how it ended in Boston? And his I think his answer, like, if you just read the transcription, you'd be like, I don't even know if that makes sense, because he's kind of saying like, yes, I do regret some things, but like, no, I don't. But when you actually watch it and like kind of see how contemplative he is and like see his face, I think his answer makes sense, and I get what he's saying, where it's like, I think he does. He said he let emotions get in the way of contract discussions at points, which I think basically is like, oh, you're only offering me that, like, screw you type of, right? Like, kind of letting that take over and maybe get into your mind a little bit. And he said, I think both sides would probably do things a little different when it comes to negotiations. But then, as he also points out, like, he won another Stanley Cup and has had a great time in Florida, and he does clearly love that team. So I think one thing that has really come across these last few days are like conflicted emotions, where part of him is like loves where he is and loves what he's done with the Panthers, and is very happy to have the contract he has there. And part of him is also sad that like that it had to end in Boston, and that his second Stanley Cup wasn't here, and that he didn't end up being a career Bruin. So yeah, I thought that was interesting, and it's clear there's just still so much love from him and to him when it comes to Boston and when it comes to the Bruins organization, which is why he can see himself being back in it someday. Because no matter what those contract negotiations were like, the bridges aren't all burned. Like I think there's people who want to spin it that way, but like there's clearly still a lot of love and respect there, I think.
Yeah, and he's not talking about coming back and playing in Boston, but he's talking about post-career, coming back and being in the organization in a different role. And also, like you mentioned, Brian, we didn't have a chance to go over all the comments. If you wanted to hear what Zaka and Geeky said, I posted that to my Twitter. I think Scott posted what Pasternak said, talking about Marchand and the tribute. So those are there if you want to listen to those post-game comments. And then I have one final plug, which is an exciting interview I'm about to do after we get off of here. We record This Week in Hockey East on Wednesdays, and it airs Friday at 6:30. This week
on Nesson.
On Nesson, yes. Sorry, thank you for fixing my plug. That was not as detailed as it really should have been. 6:30 on Nesson, you can hear us talk to Dean Letourneau. He's going to be our guest this week. And last week we had Ben Barr, and I asked him about Alvin Boya. So we normally have a pretty good college guest, and we try to tie it into Bruins stuff too, because obviously it's on Nesson. Sometimes they'll take a clip from it and they'll play it on Bruins pregame. This week, I'm sure you'll probably see a clip from it on Bruins pregame at some point, because Letourneau is of interest as a Bruins prospect, but he's been having a better season, which we've touched on a little bit. Now we're finally going to get to hear from him how he feels like his season is going. I'm excited to talk to him. I've never actually had a chance to before, so we'll see what kind of personality he has, and what he has to say. I think we are going to ask him some fun questions at the end too. So if you want to kind of get to know a Bruins prospect a little bit more and hear from him, you can tune into that. And I think everybody should just record it and watch it when they can, because it's a good show. But anyway, there's my plug and I think people will be interested to hear from him. So,
all right, thank you both very much. Thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you on Friday. Hey guys, thanks for watching the Skate Podcast. If you want to see more of our videos, visit our playlist.
Not in front of a screen? You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment.